Hi, welcome to session number 11 in our series of videos about the state of our country and the planet as seen from the perspective of the material world. Let's continue talking about taxes. Many of you have been convinced that most or perhaps even all of the taxes that you pay should not be charged to you in the first place. And I will agree that there are some bureaucracies that are ineffective and some that are unnecessary. And those need to be streamlined in some cases and eliminated in other cases as it may be found to be appropriate. However, Hurricane Katrina and numerous other situations, including the April 2011 tornadoes in Alabama and elsewhere, and the more recent ones in Joplin, Missouri, and so on, and of course Hurricane Irene, have let us all know in no uncertain terms just how indispensable the government, especially the federal government, really is. Education, social safety nets, law enforcement, defense, and our infrastructure are only part of an almost endless list of very important social needs and societal needs that national government must fulfill. Upcoming needs for Medicare, Medicaid, and other social programs, including Social Security, must be stressed and addressed before, must be addressed before the baby boom generation and its coming impact are fully upon us. Privatizing or even cutting Social Security or other such programs is not the answer, nor is raising the retirement age. Getting rid of or making our government ineffective is also not the answer. That would be a disaster. Perhaps those who say that the government is the problem and would prefer that there be no federal government would then prefer that we just dissolve the federal government and have 50 separate countries instead of 50 states. Then each state could have its own army, they could handle their own disasters, make wars on other countries and other states. And it will logically follow that they would also believe that this would solve everything if they believe that having no federal government would take care of things. Any thinking person can see how ridiculous this would be. There must be a strong, effective federal government, and those who believe otherwise either haven't thought it through, just don't understand, or could perhaps redouble their profits if there were no strong federal government to protect the people by reasonably regulating those in business and in other ways. Without a strong federal government, they would have a free hand to do business in any way that they pleased. All of you who do understand the situation know also that our educational system needs help. And at the time of this video, we still have millions of people without health care. If many of those who ran for office in 2010 have their way, the health care legislation would be repealed before it ever begins its full coverage. And there will be no health care for so very many who so desperately need it. Why tie the hands of those responsible for such programs by cutting taxes that are required for all the needs listed above and countless more, especially when the vast majority of the tax cuts are giving the most benefit to those who need it least, the extremely wealthy? Be willing to pay your fair share of taxes and insist that others, especially those I've pointed out here, do the same. In addition, you must insist that the politicians use those tax dollars for the high priorities that must be given to education, health care, and infrastructure, among other needs. And these need to be done in a way that creates millions of jobs quickly, either public or private, or both. The amount that most working families might receive from a tax cut will be more than taken away by increasing costs of health care, education, food, gasoline, heating, and other fuels, and countless other things that leave the average working family very little to live on. Flood the lawmakers with your demands until they stop talking about doing something and actually do it. Shouldn't we all be willing to pay our share of fair and equitable taxes? That should be even more true if we receive for those taxes, as we should, free or very reasonably priced health care for everyone, free quality education through college for our children, and honest politicians who care more about us than about the lobbyists who are representing business or other private interests and who pay for politicians' vacations and fill their coffers. This lobbying must be prohibited. Elections and the debates that precede them must be publicly financed and open to all who meet the basic requirements of the office they seek. These are charges or changes that we as a people must insist upon from our legislators and political leaders at all levels of government. The misrepresentation that decreasing taxes on the wealthy and the corporate structure increases jobs was proven false during the 8 years of the previous administration of George W. Bush. Why are the ultra-conservatives being allowed to extort, and I'm saying the word extort, the federal government to get tax breaks for the very wealthy when their taxes are already at the lowest point in more than 50 years? Start recall petitions to get these obstructionist politicians out of office now before it's too late. That's all I have to say about taxes for now. And we will talk now about national defense. We'll talk a little bit about that. And I'm not going to make any pretense that I'm an expert on national defense, so what I have to say will not be lengthy. The length of what I have to say, however, should not be taken as an indicator that it's not accurate or that it's not worthwhile or important. Given the current state of the world, our country must have a strong national defense. There should be no question about that. The United States of America must be protected from attack, and so that no other nation will be able to force their will upon us in any way. We must remember, however, that President Eisenhower, as he was leaving office, warned us to be wary of that which he described as the military-industrial complex. Excuse me. You need to be made aware that there are those in this world who have a vested interest in the selling of arms, ammunition, and related materials for use in war. Some of those people are not above instigating conflict anywhere in the world in order to create, restart, or otherwise bring about conditions of war so that they can sell and or profit from the selling of weapons of war of every size and description to one side or the other, and if possible, to both sides. There are also other means of profiting from war by setting up businesses of many kinds in the defeated nation so that those business interests and those who profit from their success can also benefit greatly. We must not also forget, however, that we should never take our safety for granted, because from time to time there are still those today who may present a danger, including those deemed as terrorists, who would destroy innocent lives if given the opportunity to do so. We must be on guard against such persons and groups and continue to seek the terrorists out and take away their ability to harm us. Be aware also, however, that there are policy decisions that could be made by the leadership of our government that would greatly reduce the threat from terrorists. Knowledgeable people of wisdom in such matters should come together and put great pressure on our leaders in government and on leaders around the world to make the policy changes that would help bring about the desired reduction in this threat from terrorism and terrorists. I must also say, however, that we should in no way diminish our vigilance regarding the threat from terrorists and others. Excuse me. We shouldn't take that danger lightly. However, in my opinion, it is very unlikely that we need a defense budget that has too often been greater than the combined defense budgets of all the other industrialized countries combined in the world. All of them combined. I must say also that such danger does not in any way justify the wide excesses that have been given to those in the government to spy on anyone, even their own innocent citizens, some of whom may only disagree with their policies. This appears to be done without the government even having to obtain approval in some cases from judges or being accountable in any way. Neither does it justify the use of physical torture or humiliation in the questioning of our enemies. There must be accountability. We are the United States of America. This is our country. And it's time that we started acting like the beacon of hope and freedom and light that has always been a hallmark of our identity to ourselves and to the rest of the world. It was my hope that the new administration elected in 2008 would understand the need to take a higher approach than was taken by these and other areas in previous administrations. A higher approach than was taken in these areas and in other areas by the previous administrations. There were a number of positive signs, of course, that this may have been happening in the new administration, but unfortunately, as time has gone by, I am not favorably impressed, largely because of the lack of progress in many of those areas and in other areas of concern. We need to know why so many of our more liberal congressmen, senators, and presidents, once in office, govern more like moderately conservative Republicans. We will discuss that later in more detail. I want to thank you for watching, and in the next session, number 12, we will talk briefly about labor unions. Thank you very much.